When Dr. Marcus asked Julia to be his wife for his dying father's peace, she thought 3 weeks of pretending would cost nothing. His condition changed everything, and the beautiful lie became the most honest truth she'd lived. The fluorescent lights of Memorial Hospital's cardiac wing hummed their usual monotonous tune as Julia Montgomery adjusted the IV drip for Mrs. Patterson in room 304. It was 11:47 p.m. on a Thursday, that strange hour when the hospital existed in a kind of limbo between the chaos of evening rounds and the quiet desperation of pre-dawn emergencies. Julia had worked the night shift for 6 years now, ever since her divorce. The hours were brutal, but they allowed her to be home when her daughter Lily left for school and to pick her up each afternoon. It was a trade-off she'd made peace with, even if it meant she rarely saw daylight and survived on 4 hours of sleep. "You're an angel, dear," Mrs. Patterson murmured, her wrinkled hand patting Julia's arm with surprising strength. "My Henry used to say that good nurses have healing hands. You've got them." Julia smiled, the genuine kind that reached her eyes despite the exhaustion. "That's sweet of you, Mrs. Patterson, but Dr. Bennett is the one who saved your life with that surgery. I just make sure you're comfortable." "Oh, Dr. Bennett." The elderly woman's face lit up. "Now there's a puzzle. Brilliant surgeon, everyone says. But have you ever seen him smile? Really smile?" Julia paused, thinking about the question more carefully than she probably should have. Dr. Marcus Bennett had been at Memorial for 3 years, and in that time, she'd probably seen him smile exactly twice. Both times had been brief, almost accidental, as if he'd forgotten himself for a moment before remembering that joy wasn't part of his carefully constructed armor. "He's focused on his work," Julia offered diplomatically. "He's lonely," Mrs. Patterson corrected with the bluntness of someone who'd lived 83 years and had no patience for polite deflection. "I've seen men like him before. They build walls so high they forget how to find the door." Before Julia could respond, her pager buzzed. "Cardiac ICU, Dr. Bennett requesting her presence." She excused herself and made her way down the corridor, her sensible shoes squeaking softly against the polished floor. The ICU was quieter than usual tonight. Only 4 of the 12 beds were occupied. Dr. Bennett stood at the nurse's station, his tall frame hunched over a chart. Dark hair slightly disheveled in a way that suggested he'd run his hands through it repeatedly. He wore his usual expression, intense concentration mixed with something that looked dangerously close to exhaustion. "Dr. Bennett, you paged?" He looked up, and for just a second, Julia saw something flicker across his face. Relief, maybe, or recognition that extended beyond their professional relationship. "Julia, thank you for coming." His voice was lower than usual, rougher around the edges. "I need to discuss Mr. Harrison's care plan." They spent 20 minutes reviewing charts and adjusting medication protocols. It was purely professional, the kind of interaction they'd had hundreds of times before. But tonight felt different. Julia noticed the way his hand trembled slightly when he signed an order. She noticed the tightness around his eyes, the way he kept glancing toward room 7. "Is everything all right?" she asked when they finished. Marcus closed the chart and looked at her directly for the first time that night. His eyes were gray-green, she noticed, like the ocean before a storm. She'd worked beside him for 3 years and had somehow never noticed that detail. "My father is in room 7. The words hung between them, heavy with unspoken meaning. Julia felt her heart constrict. She'd seen the admission earlier but hadn't made the connection. William Bennett, 71, advanced heart failure. "I didn't know. I'm so sorry. There's no reason you would have known." Marcus leaned against the counter, and for the first time since she'd met him, the famous surgeon looked utterly human, vulnerable. "We're not close, haven't been for years." Julia understood estrangement. Her own father had walked out when she was 12, leaving her mother to raise 3 kids alone. Some wounds never fully healed. They just became part of your landscape. "Is there anything I can do?" Marcus laughed, but it was a hollow sound. "Unless you can perform miracles, I don't think so. He's got maybe 3 weeks, a month at most. His heart is giving out, and he's refusing the transplant list." "Why?" "Says he's lived long enough. Says he's made peace with dying." Marcus paused, his jaw tightening. "But there's one thing he won't make peace with." "What's that?" "He wants to see me married before he dies." Julia wasn't sure what she'd expected him to say, but it wasn't that. "Oh, He's been asking about my personal life constantly. Says his biggest regret is that he'll die without seeing me settled, without grandchildren. Marcus rubbed his face with both hands. I've tried explaining that I'm focused on my career, that I'm not interested in marriage, but he won't let it go. That must be difficult. It's impossible. He straightened up, and Julia saw something shift in his expression. What came next would be a decision, she realized. Something he'd been wrestling with. Julia, can I ask you something? And please, feel free to say no. Her pulse quickened inexplicably. Of course. How long have we worked together? 3 years. Almost exactly. In that time, have I ever been inappropriate with you? Ever made you uncomfortable? The question surprised her. No, never. You've always been professional. Good. Because what I'm about to ask is going to sound insane, but I promise you, I'm asking out of desperation, not disrespect. Julia waited, her mind racing through possibilities, none of which prepared her for what came next. Would you be willing to pretend to be my wife? Just for a few weeks. Just long enough for my father to die in peace, believing I've found someone. The words seemed to echo in the quiet ICU. Julia stared at him, trying to process what he'd just asked. It was absurd, completely absurd. And yet, looking at his face, she saw genuine desperation there. A son who had built his life around saving others, but couldn't save his father from dying. Disappointed. You want me to lie to a dying man? I want to give him peace. He doesn't have much time, Julia. A few weeks at most. I know it's crazy. I know I have no right to ask. But I've watched you for 3 years. He paused, as if weighing his next words carefully. I've seen how you are with patients. The way you make them feel seen, cared for. You have this warmth about you that people trust instinctively. Julia felt heat rise to her cheeks. She'd had no idea he'd noticed anything about her beyond her competence with medications and protocols. Why me specifically? Because you're genuine. My father would see through anyone fake in a heartbeat. He's a retired lawyer, spent 40 years reading people for a living. But you care about people. It shows in everything you do. If anyone could make this believable, it's you. Dr. Bennett, Marcus, if we're going to do this, you should probably call me Marcus. Marcus, she corrected, the name feeling strange on her tongue. I don't know. This feels wrong on so many levels. I know, and I'll understand completely if you say no. I shouldn't have asked. He started to turn away, but Julia surprised herself by reaching out and touching his arm. Wait, if I agreed, and I'm not saying I am, what would this involve exactly? Marcus turned back, and she saw hope flicker in his tired eyes. You'd need to visit him with me a few times. Maybe hold my hand, act affectionate. Tell him some story about how we met, how we fell in love. That's it. That's it? He hesitated, and Julia knew there was more. There's one complication. What? He wants us to stay with him, at his house, for whatever time he has left. Julia felt the floor shift beneath her feet. Stay with him, as in live there. His housekeeper has the guest room, and she refuses to leave her post. She practically raised me, so we'd have to share the master suite on the 2nd floor. Marcus rushed to add, there's a large sitting room attached with a sofa. I'd sleep there. You'd have complete privacy. But to him, we'd appear to be living as husband and wife. This was getting more complicated by the second. Marcus, I have an 8-year-old daughter. Bring her. My father's house is huge, 5 bedrooms. She could have her own room. There's a great school district nearby. She could continue attending classes. In fact, he paused, something shifting in his expression. Having a granddaughter, even temporarily, might give him even more peace. Julia thought of Lily, her bright, intuitive daughter who asked questions about everything and had wanted a father figure in her life since the divorce 2 years ago. This could confuse her terribly, or it could be the adventure she'd always wanted. This is insane. Completely, Marcus agreed. But sometimes desperation makes us consider insane things. Julia looked past him toward room 7, where a dying father lay hoping to see his son happy before the end. She thought about Mrs. Patterson's words earlier. Some men build walls so high they forget how to find the door. Maybe this wasn't about lying. Maybe it was about giving a lonely old man a few weeks of believing his son had found love. And maybe, just maybe, it was about helping Marcus learn how to unlock that door he'd sealed so tightly around his heart. If I do this, Julia said slowly, I need to know something first. Anything. Why are you really asking me? The truth, not the diplomatic version about me being genuine. Marcus met her eyes, and for the first time in 3 years of working together, Julia saw him without any armor at all. Because in 3 years of walking these halls, you're the only person who ever looked at me like I was human instead of just a surgeon. Every Tuesday night when you bring me coffee during my late surgeries, you ask how I'm doing and actually wait for an answer. When I lost a patient 6 months ago, you left a note on my locker that said, "You save more lives than you lose." Don't forget that. I still have that note in my wallet. Julia hadn't known that. She'd written it on impulse after seeing how devastated he'd looked that night. You notice things about people, Marcus continued. You care about people. And for some reason I don't understand, you seem to care about me too. That's why I'm asking you. Because if anyone can help me give my father peace in his final weeks, it's you. The honesty in his voice broke something open in Julia's chest. She thought about all the years she'd spent taking care of everyone else, her patients, her daughter, her mother who lived 2 hours away and called constantly with minor crises. When was the last time someone had asked her to do something that mattered this much? I need to meet your father first, before I decide. Marcus's face transformed. It wasn't quite a smile, but it was close. Really? Really? But I'm not promising anything. If I get a bad feeling about any of this, I walk away. Agreed? Agreed. He paused. Julia, thank you. Just for considering this. Don't thank me yet. I might still say no. But even as she said it, Julia suspected she'd already made her decision. There was something about the vulnerability in Marcus's eyes, the genuine desperation of a son who wanted to give his father peace. It resonated with something deep in her own heart. That instinct to heal, to help, to make things better even when the situation seemed impossible. When? She asked. Tomorrow? Your shift ends at 7 a.m. I could pick you up at 9 after you've slept. Make it 10. I need to talk to Lily first. As Julia walked back toward Mrs. Patterson's room to check one final time before her rounds continued, she realized her hands were shaking slightly. In the span of 20 minutes, her carefully ordered life had tilted on its axis. Behind her, she heard Marcus exhale, a sound that carried the weight of both relief and anxiety. Neither of them knew it yet, but that conversation had just set in motion a chain of events that would change both their lives in ways they couldn't possibly imagine. What started as an act of mercy would become something neither of them had the words for yet. Something real, something precious, something worth fighting for. But first, Julia had to meet the dying father who wanted nothing more than to see his son happy. And Marcus had to learn that sometimes, the walls we build to protect ourselves become the very prisons that keep us from living. Julia sat at her kitchen table watching Lily devour chocolate chip pancakes. Sunlight streamed through their apartment window, illuminating her daughter's messy curls and syrup-stained chin. Whatever decision she made about Marcus's request would affect Lily too. Mom, you're staring weird, Lily observed with those perceptive brown eyes. Did I do something wrong? No, baby. I need to talk about something important. Lily's expression shifted to concern. Since the divorce, she'd developed radar for serious conversations. Are we moving? No, but there might be changes for a few weeks. You know Dr. Bennett from the hospital? The serious one? Julia smiled. His father is dying. His last wish is to see Dr. Bennett married before he passes. Lily's eyes widened. That's so sad. Dr. Bennett asked if I'd pretend to be his wife just for a few weeks, to give his father peace. Like acting. Lily processed this with unusual gravity. Like the school play. Exactly. But why you? Such a simple question, cutting to Julia's own uncertainty. He trusts me. He needs someone who cares about people. Where would we pretend? His father's house. We'd stay there temporarily. You'd have your own room and keep going to your school. A flicker of hope crossed Lily's face before she neutralized it. Julia recognized that look, the same one when Lily saw other kids with fathers. Would he be nice to us? I believe so. He's a good man who saves lives. He's just built walls around his heart. Like the Ice Queen movie? Something like that. Lily pushed pancake pieces thoughtfully. What if his dad figures out we're pretending? The question mirrored Julia's ethical concerns. Dr. Bennett's father only has weeks to live. Maybe giving him happiness for that short time matters more than strict truth. Mom, you say lying is wrong, but you also say we do hard things to help people we care about. Which is this? Julia's eyes pricked with tears. When had her daughter become so wise? Both, sweetheart. That's why it's complicated. Do you care about Dr. Bennett? The question caught Julia off guard. 3 years of working together, noticing things she probably shouldn't. How he checked on nursing staff during surgeries, remembered patient names months later, bought Girl Scout cookies from every nurse's daughter. I care about helping someone hurting. His father deserves to die in peace. Lily nodded slowly. Then we should do it. But can we bring Mr. Whiskers? Julia laughed, despite the weight on her chest. Yes, baby, we can bring Mr. Whiskers. 3 hours later, Julia stood before her closet, trying to decide what one wore to meet a dying man you were supposed to convince you'd married his son. She finally chose a simple navy dress her mother said made her look trustworthy. The irony wasn't lost on her. Marcus arrived exactly at 10, driving a sleek silver sedan. He looked as nervous as she felt, hair damp from showering, wearing jeans and a Henley instead of his white coat. You look nice, he said, immediately embarrassed. You look different without the coat. Different good or bad? Just different. She grabbed her purse. Fair warning, I'm terrified. That makes 2 of us. He opened her door. My father spent 40 years as a trial lawyer. He reads people instantly. Great. No pressure. As they drove, Julia noticed his tight grip on the wheel. When did you last see him? Thanksgiving, 2 years ago. We argued about my lifestyle priorities. He said I was becoming cold. I said he had no right to judge. Marcus's jaw tightened. I left halfway through dinner. Haven't been back since. What changed? Because he's dying. All those arguments seem pointless when faced with forever. He glanced at her. Have you had someone you love die angry at you? Julia thought of her father who'd left when she was 12, died when she was 19. They'd never reconciled. Yes. Then you understand. They drove past modest neighborhoods into areas with gated estates and endless lawns. Finally, Marcus turned down a tree-lined drive, revealing a beautiful colonial house. White columns, black shutters, elegant gardens. He bought this after my mother died. Too many memories in our old house. Marcus parked but didn't exit. Julia, before we go in, some background. My mother died when I was 15. Cancer. It destroyed my father. He threw himself into work, became obsessed with control since he couldn't control her dying. So you became a cardiac surgeon. Marcus nodded. I wanted to save people like no one could save her. My father thought I was running from emotions through medicine. Ironic, since he did the same with law. We see our patterns most clearly in others. Exactly. He'll ask questions. How we met, when we fell in love, why we kept it secret. I told him last night you existed, that I'd been seeing you privately to avoid hospital gossip. What did he say? He wanted to meet you immediately. Then he cried. Marcus's voice cracked. I haven't seen my father cry since my mother's funeral. Julia squeezed his hand. We can do this. The front door opened before they reached it. A tiny Latina woman in her 60s stood there, face mixing joy and suspicion. Marcus Bennett, staying away so long. Even scolding, she pulled him into a fierce hug. Your father's been asking every 10 minutes. Hi, Rosa. This is Julia. Julia Rosa Mendez. She's been with my father since I was 5. She's family. Rosa's sharp eyes assessed Julia in 3 seconds, then softened. You have kind eyes. Come. Williams in the conservatory. The house was elegant, high ceilings, crown molding, original artwork, but also personal. Photographs on mantels, worn leather chairs, books everywhere. Rosa led them to a sun-filled room overlooking gardens, where roses bloomed red and yellow. In the center, in a stark hospital bed, lay William Bennett. Julia's nurse instincts kicked in immediately. Pale skin, blue-tinted lips, oxygen cannula, advanced heart failure. But his eyes were sharp, intelligent, fixed on her intensely. So, he said, voice rough but strong, this is the mysterious woman who captured my son's heart. Marcus moved to his father's side, genuine emotion showing. Dad, this is Julia Montgomery. Julia extended her hand, but William cupped her face instead with a trembling hand. Let me look at you properly. His eyes searched hers. You're not what I expected. What did you expect? Someone more polished. From his world of medicine and money. His hand dropped. You're real. That's good. My son needs real. Sit down, both of you, William continued. I want to hear how this happened. Julia and Marcus exchanged glances. This was the moment they'd either succeed or fail spectacularly. 3 years ago, Julia began steadily. I was working night shift in cardiac ICU. Marcus was doing emergency surgery on a young mother who'd had a heart attack at her daughter's birthday party. I remember that case, William said quietly. The surgery lasted 9 hours. I brought him coffee at 2 a.m. because he looked exhausted. Julia smiled at the real memory. He thanked me, then asked if I thought the patient would make it. Most doctors don't ask nurses that. Marcus watched her with an unreadable expression. You said she would make it because she had something to live for. Her daughter needed her. Did she survive? William asked. She did. She sends cards every year. Her daughter just started college. That's when I noticed him, Julia continued, truth and fiction blending dangerously. Not just as a surgeon, but as someone who cared deeply about every life he touched. When did you fall in love? William's eyes were laser-focused. Julia's heart spiked. They hadn't prepared for this question. Not one moment, she said slowly. It accumulated. Every Tuesday when he stayed late, I'd bring coffee and we'd talk between patients. He told me about wanting to save everyone, feeling like failure when he couldn't. I told him about my daughter, being divorced and scared I wasn't enough. You have a child? William's face lit up. Lily. She's 8. Julia showed him a photo. Lily, grinning, gap-toothed, holding up a rainbow drawing. William stared at the picture, eyes growing wet. I always wanted grandchildren. The raw emotion made Julia's throat tighten. This was why Marcus asked, to give this dying man a glimpse of the family he'd always wanted. She's excited to meet you, Julia said impulsively. I could bring her tomorrow. I'd like that very much. William looked at Marcus. You kept this from me 3 years? I was scared, Marcus admitted rawly. Scared you'd disapprove. Scared I'd mess it up like I mess everything that matters. Marcus, no, Dad. Let me finish. You were right about me becoming cold. After Mom died, after we lost connection, I built walls. I threw myself into work because saving hearts I could cut open was easier than dealing with my own. Marcus reached for Julia's hand, their fingers interlaced naturally. Julia changed that. She made me remember how to feel. Silence fell except for oxygen hissing softly. Father and son looked at each other, years of unspoken pain hanging between them. Finally, William spoke. Come here, son. Marcus moved closer. William gripped his shoulder. I'm sorry for pushing you away after your mother died, for expecting you to grieve my way, for all the wasted years of pride. Dad, you don't... Yes, I do. I'm dying, Marcus. No time for leaving things unsaid. His hand trembled, moving to cup his son's face. I'm proud of you, of the doctor you became, the man you are, and grateful you found someone who sees the heart I always knew was there. Julia felt tears slip down her cheeks, watching Marcus cry openly, probably for the first time in years. This moment was real. Whatever role she played, this reconciliation was genuine, raw, beautiful. Rosa appeared in the doorway. William needs rest now. Doctor's orders. Standing to leave, William caught Julia's hand. Will you come back tomorrow? With your daughter? Of course, Julia. His grip tightened. Thank you for loving my son, for giving this old man hope before the end. His gratitude sat like a stone in Julia's chest. He was dying believing his son found love, and she perpetuated that beautiful lie. Outside, walking to the car, Marcus suddenly stopped. I can't do this. Julia's heart sank. What? I can't lie to a dying man. It's not fair. We should tell him the truth. Marcus, Julia grabbed his arms. Did you see his face? Did you see how happy he was? Built on a lie. Built on love. Your love for him, wanting peace. My willingness to help because I understand losing someone with things unsaid. She shook him gently. Sometimes mercy matters more than truth. But, no. We're giving your father the gift of believing his son is loved, is happy. She waited until he met her eyes. Maybe it's not entirely a lie. Maybe helping each other, we'll find something real. She hadn't meant to say that. It slipped out on emotion she didn't fully understand. Marcus stared at her, something shifting in his expression. "You're extraordinary. I'm a nurse doing what nurses do, caring for people who need it. You're so much more than that." They stood in the driveway as afternoon sun painted everything gold. Two people who barely knew each other, who'd stumbled into an intimacy both terrifying and inevitable. "Tomorrow," Marcus said finally. "Bring Lily. Let my father meet his temporary granddaughter. Let him have every moment of joy we can give." Julia nodded, then impulsively hugged him. Marcus tensed briefly before his arms came around her, holding on like she was a lifeline in a storm he'd been weathering alone far too long. Rosa watched from the window, a knowing smile on her face. She'd seen love bloom in unlikely soil before. This particular garden was just beginning to grow. Julia stood in front of her bathroom mirror at 6 a.m., having barely slept. In the doorway, Lily appeared already dressed in her favorite purple dress, hair half brushed. "Mom, are you nervous?" "A little," Julia admitted, turning to fix her daughter's tangles. "Are you? What if he doesn't like me?" "Baby, he's going to love you. But remember, this is pretend. We're helping Dr. Bennett give his father happiness." "I know." Lily looked up with wise eyes. "But is it wrong that part of me wishes it was real?" Julia pulled her into a hug, unable to answer because she'd wondered the same thing all night. Marcus arrived at 9, holding a small wrapped box. "For Lily," he said, looking almost shy. "If it's okay." Lily unwrapped it carefully. A real children's stethoscope, not a toy. "My father gave me one just like this when I was your age," Marcus explained. "He said if I was going to listen to my mother's heartbeat, I should do it properly." "Your mom was sick too?" Lily asked with child directness. "She died when I was 15. I'm sorry. My dad left, but at least he's not dead." Lily considered this, though sometimes I think maybe that would be easier to understand. Marcus knelt to her level. "You're absolutely right. At least with death, you know they didn't choose to leave." "Exactly. Nobody gets that." Julia felt tears watching this exchange. Marcus had just given Lily something she'd been trying to provide for 2 years: validation. The drive felt different with Lily chattering in the back seat. Her enthusiasm was infectious, and Marcus smiled more genuinely than Julia had ever seen. "Dr. Bennett, is your dad scary?" Lily asked suddenly. "Marcus. Call me Marcus." He glanced at her in the rearview mirror. "And no, he's not scary. He's very smart and very sick, but he's been excited to meet you. Because he thinks you and my mom are married." "Yes. That makes you his granddaughter. Is that okay?" Lily was quiet. "Will it make him happy?" "Very happy." "Then it's okay." "But Marcus, after he dies, will we still be friends? Or does the pretending end completely?" The question hung in the air. Julia hadn't considered what would happen after William passed. "I'd like us to still be friends," Marcus said quietly. "If that's okay." "Yeah, that would be good." Rosa was waiting at the door, eyes lighting up when she saw Lily. "Ay, mi amor." She pulled Lily into an immediate hug. "William has been asking about you since dawn. He even put on his good pajamas." "He has good pajamas?" Lily asked, fascinated. "Silk ones. Come, let me show you your room first." The bedroom made Lily gasp, soft lavenders and whites, with a canopy bed like something from a fairy tale. "Is this really for me?" "For as long as you're here," Rosa confirmed. "William had me prepare it yesterday. Every granddaughter needs a special room." Julia watched her daughter's face transform with wonder. How would she explain when this ended that this wasn't really hers? "Can I put my stethoscope here?" Lily clutched Marcus's gift. "Of course. This is your room now." "Lily," Marcus said gently, "are you ready to meet my father?" The little girl straightened her shoulders. "Yes. Let's go make him happy." William was sitting up in silk pajamas when they entered, freshly shaved, looking almost dignified despite his pallor and oxygen cannula. His eyes locked on Lily immediately. "There she is," he breathed. "Come here, sweetheart." Lily approached cautiously. When she reached his bedside, William extended a trembling hand. "I'm Lily. I brought my stethoscope. Marcus gave it to me. Would you like me to listen to your heart?" Something in William's expression cracked open. "Would you?" With complete focus, Lily placed the stethoscope in her ears and pressed it against William's chest. She listened intently. It sounds tired, she pronounced. Like it's been working really hard for a really long time. That's exactly right, William said, voice thick. How did you know? Because my mom's heart sounded like that after she worked 3 jobs. Hearts get tired when they work too hard for too long. Julia felt Marcus's hand find hers, squeezing gently. She was crying, watching her daughter show more emotional intelligence than most adults possessed. Your mother must be very strong, William observed. She's the strongest person I know. She says we do hard things because love makes us brave. Lily looked at Marcus, then Julia. That's why we're here, right? To help Marcus be brave enough to love you again. The room fell silent. Lily had cut through their deception to articulate a truth none had acknowledged. This wasn't just about comforting a dying man, but helping Marcus remember how to open his heart. Yes, William said finally, tears streaming. That's exactly why you're here, sweetheart. Good, Lily nodded with satisfaction. Then we should spend time together. That's how love grows. Do you like stories? I love stories. Me too. I brought 3 books. Want me to read to you? William looked at Marcus and Julia with gratitude and wonder. I would love that more than anything. For the next hour, Lily read aloud, fairy tales and adventures that seemed absurdly cheerful against the medical equipment. But William listened with complete attention. Julia watched Marcus watching them, saw his careful composure crack. His shoulders shook with silent tears. Hey, she whispered, leading him to the windows. What is it? She's perfect, Marcus said roughly. Your daughter is absolutely perfect. And my father, he looks happier than I've seen him in years. Marcus, I don't deserve this. I don't deserve your kindness, Lily's affection, my father's forgiveness. Julia gripped his arms. Stop. You deserve all of it. You're a good man who made mistakes. Your father was waiting for you to come home. Now you're here. But it's based on a lie. Is it? Julia challenged. Because standing here, watching my daughter read to your father, this doesn't feel like a lie. This feels real. Before he could respond, Lily called out. Marcus, Mr. William wants to know about the heart surgery you did yesterday. Marcus returned to his father's bedside. Julia watched as he explained a valve replacement in language Lily could understand. William listened with pride evident. You're an artist, William said. Your mother would have been so proud. She would have liked Julia and Lily, Marcus said, meaning it. Mom always said I needed someone who would see past the walls I build. Your mother was wise. William reached for Julia's hand. Come sit with me, daughter. Daughter. The word hit Julia like a physical blow. She moved to the chair beside his bed. Thank you, he said simply, for seeing my son when he couldn't see himself, for bringing this beautiful child into our family, for giving this old man the gift of knowing his son won't be alone when I'm gone. Mr. Bennett, William. Call me William. His grip tightened. I know I don't have long. Days. Maybe a week or 2. But these days with you here, they're the happiest I've had since my wife died. You've given me back my son. Julia couldn't speak past the lump in her throat. The weight of his gratitude sat like stones, heavy with knowledge this joy was built on deception. But seeing genuine peace on his face, she couldn't regret their choice. Rosa appeared with lunch, homemade soup and fresh bread. They ate together, the 4 of them plus Rosa, who refused to eat in the kitchen. We're family, Rosa declared. Family eats together. Lily regaled them with school stories, doing teacher impressions that had William laughing until he had to pause for breath. Marcus contributed dry hospital observations, and slowly, impossibly, they began to feel like what they were pretending to be. After lunch, William's energy flagged. His breathing grew labored. You need rest, Julia said gently. I don't want to rest. I'll rest forever soon enough. But his eyes were drooping. How about a compromise? Lily suggested. You take a short nap, and when you wake up, I'll teach you the card game my friend showed me. You promise you'll still be here? The question held the fear of a man who'd lost too much. We're not going anywhere, Marcus said firmly. We're staying, Dad, for as long as you want us here. William's eyes found Julia's. Is that true? Julia thought about her small apartment, her modest life of work and worry. Then she looked at this dying man who'd become important in less than 48 hours, at Marcus slowly learning to feel again, at her daughter glowing with joy. Yes, she said, we'll stay. As William drifted to sleep, Marcus touched Julia's shoulder. "Can we talk? Outside?" They walked into the garden where late morning sun painted everything gold. Marcus was silent for several moments. "I need to tell you something," he finally said. "Okay." "This morning, when Lily asked if we'd still be friends after my father dies, I realized something." He stopped, facing her. "I don't want this to end. Not completely. Marcus, I know we're pretending. I know this is temporary. But Julia, in 2 days, you and your daughter have made me feel more alive than I've felt in 4 years. You've given me back my father. You've reminded me there's more to life than work and walls." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I don't know. I'm saying I'm confused and grateful and terrified all at once. I'm saying when I watch you with my father, when I see how naturally you care, when I hear Lily laugh, I start to think maybe I could have this, really have it, not pretend." Julia felt the ground shifting. "You barely know us. I know that Lily is wise beyond her years and kind beyond measure. I know you sacrifice everything for people you love. I know that in 3 years of working together, I've never met anyone who makes me want to be better the way you do. Marcus, this isn't real. We're playing roles." "Are we?" He moved closer. "Because it feels real to me. When you took my hand yesterday, when you hugged me, when you look at me like I'm worth saving, that feels real." Julia's breath caught. She wanted to tell him he was wrong, that this was false intimacy, but standing in the garden with sunlight on his face and vulnerability in his eyes, she couldn't find the words, because maybe he was right. "Your father is dying," she said softly. "Your emotions are heightened. When this is over, when you've grieved, you might feel differently, and I might not." He gently tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "I'm not asking you to decide anything now. I'm just asking you to consider that maybe this charade has potential to become something genuine, something worth exploring when the time is right." Before Julia could respond, Lily's voice called from the house. "Mom! Marcus! Mr. William is awake." They walked back side by side, neither speaking, but both acutely aware of how everything had shifted. What had started as simple deception was becoming complicated in ways neither anticipated. And as Julia watched Marcus take his father's hand, watched Lily climb onto the bed to show William her card game, watched Rosa bustle around making everyone comfortable, she realized something terrifying. She was starting to care about these people. Really care. Not as a nurse or an actress, but as someone becoming emotionally invested in their happiness and pain. The walls she'd built around her own heart since her divorce were starting to crack. And unlike Marcus, who was just learning to feel again, Julia knew exactly how much it would hurt when those walls finally came down. 5 days into their arrangement, Julia woke at 3 a.m. to find Marcus's side of the sitting room empty. She'd grown accustomed to the sound of his breathing through the partially open door. She found him in the conservatory, sitting beside his father's bed in darkness. William was asleep, his breathing labored even with oxygen turned up. Marcus held his father's hand, tears streaming silently. "Hey," Julia whispered, placing her hands on his shoulders. "How long have you been here?" "Since midnight." His oxygen levels dropped. "I adjusted everything, but..." His voice cracked. "He's getting worse, Julia." "I know." Marcus looked up at her. "I wasted so much time. 2 years of stupid pride when I could have been here." Julia knelt in front of him, taking his face in her hands. "You're here now. That's what matters." "Is it enough?" "Yes." She said it with absolute certainty. "Look at his face. Even sleeping, he looks peaceful. Because you came home. Because you brought us here. A pretend family." "Is it?" Julia challenged softly. "Because I watch Lily with him every day, and that love isn't pretend." Marcus pulled her closer, resting his forehead against hers. "What about us? What we're feeling, is that pretend?" Julia's breath caught. "I don't know what's real, and what's this situation making us feel." "I think I know," Marcus whispered. "I think I've been falling for you in tiny increments for 3 years, and I was too scared to admit it until now." Before Julia could respond, William stirred. His eyes opened, landing on them kneeling together. "There you are," he murmured weakly. "I had the strangest dream that you'd left." "Never," Marcus said immediately. "We're right here, Dad." "Good." William's breathing was ragged. "Julia, dear, I need to tell you both something." "What?" Julia asked. When Marcus first told me about you, I was suspicious. My son disappears for 2 years, suddenly shows up with a wife and child. It felt too convenient. Julia's heart sank. He knew. But then I met you. I watched how you looked at my son. Not with pity or obligation, but with genuine care. I saw Lily's wisdom and kindness. William squeezed her hand. It doesn't matter how this started. What matters is what it's becoming. William, I've watched you both this week. The way Marcus smiles at you when you're not looking. The way you steady him when he's falling apart. That's not acting. That's real. He looked at Marcus. When I'm gone, don't let this end. Don't let fear make you walk away from something extraordinary. The room fell silent, except for the hiss of oxygen. I love you both, William said. My son and the daughter I gained in my final days. As dawn broke, William told Julia stories about Marcus as a boy. Brilliant and sensitive, always trying to fix things. He was 8 when our neighbor's cat died. He tried to perform CPR on it for 20 minutes. William smiled. That's when I knew he'd be a doctor. He couldn't bear anything dying if he could prevent it. He still carries that, Julia observed. I know. When his mother died, he stopped crying altogether. Built those walls. William looked at her. You're reaching him now. You and that remarkable daughter. Lily appeared in the doorway, still in pajamas. She'd taken to wandering the house at odd hours, completely comfortable here. I heard voices, she said, climbing onto the bed. Mr. William, you're up early. Too much to think about, sweetheart. Like what? Like how lucky I am to have met you. Lily snuggled carefully against his side. I never had a grandpa before. William wrapped his arm around her, memorizing the moment. Lily, I need to tell you something. I'm going to die soon. You know that, right? Yes. Mom explained your heart is too tired. When I die, things will change. Your mom and Marcus might not stay together. This room might not be yours anymore. Lily was quiet. But will the love be gone too? What do you mean? When my dad left, he took his love with him. I could feel it disappear. But the love here feels different. It feels like it's growing roots, like the plant we're studying. Even if we leave the house, won't the roots stay? William looked at Julia, tears streaming. Yes, sweetheart, the roots will stay. That's the smartest thing anyone's ever said to me. The next days blurred together. William's condition deteriorated steadily. His moments of lucidity grew shorter, the pain harder to manage. Julia's nursing skills became less about pretending and more about genuine care. She and Marcus fell into a rhythm of caregiving that felt like real partnership. Check his oxygen, Marcus would say, and Julia's hands were already moving. He needs repositioning, Julia would observe, and Marcus was already there. They moved around each other like dancers who'd practiced for years rather than days. Rosa watched with knowing eyes. On the 8th day, William had unusual clarity. He asked Marcus to help him to the garden, insisting he wanted to sit outside one last time. It took both Marcus and Julia to get him settled in a wheelchair, covered in blankets. Lily held his hand as they walked slowly through the roses. William touched the petals gently, breathed in their fragrance. My wife planted these, he told Lily. She said roses were proof that beautiful things could survive harsh winters if they had strong roots. Like the love roots I talked about? Exactly like that. They sat in the garden for over an hour. He told stories about Marcus's mother, how they met, how she'd made him laugh, how she'd wanted to fill their house with children and love. We only had Marcus. Complications meant we couldn't have more, but she poured all that love into him, made him understand that being smart wasn't enough. You had to be kind too. But he's remembering now, Lily observed. He smiles different than when we first came. That's because of your mother. That night, after Lily was asleep and William was resting, Marcus found Julia in the kitchen stress baking. The counters were covered with cooling cookies. Can't sleep? He asked. Too much going on in my head. Marcus took the mixing bowl from her hands, setting it gently on the counter. Talk to me. I'm scared. Not of your father dying. That's coming and we know it. I'm scared of after, of what happens when we leave this bubble we've created here. After? When this ends. When we go back to our real lives, and this week becomes just a memory tucked away somewhere we don't visit often. I don't want it to end, Marcus. I don't want to pretend this didn't change everything. Then don't. It's not that simple. Why not? Because what if this is just the intensity of the situation? What if we go back to the hospital and realize we don't actually fit in the real world? Marcus cupped her face gently. Julia, I've worked with you for 3 years in the real world. I've watched you handle emergencies, comfort families, stand up to difficult doctors. That's who you are, and that's who I've been falling for. You don't know the messy parts. Single motherhood, student loans, my mother who calls every day. I don't care about messy. I care about you. I care about Lily. I care about whatever this is becoming. He leaned his forehead against hers. I don't want to lose it because we're both too scared to try. What if we try and it doesn't work? What if we don't try and spend our lives wondering what if? Before she could respond, Rosa appeared, her face pale. Marcus, your father. He's asking for you both. I think it's time. They ran to the conservatory. William was conscious but struggling. His breathing was labored even with oxygen at maximum. Julia's nurse brain catalogued the signs. Hours, maybe less. Is Lily sleeping? William asked weakly. Yes, Julia said. Should I wake her? No. Let her remember me in the garden today. Happy. He reached for their hands. But I need you two here. Marcus sat on one side, Julia on the other, both holding William's hands. I'm not scared, William said. I'm ready. What I'm not at peace with is leaving you two in limbo. Dad. Shh. Let me finish. He looked at Julia. You've given me more in 8 days than I dared hope for. You've given me back my son. He was always here, Julia said through tears. He just needed permission to come home. William turned to Marcus. Son, I've made mistakes. I pushed when I should have pulled. But I need you to know, I have always been proud of you, always loved you. I know, Dad. I love you too. Then love her. Love that little girl sleeping upstairs. Build the family your mother and I always wanted for you. Don't waste time being afraid. I won't, Marcus promised. I swear I won't. William's breathing grew more labored, each breath a visible struggle. His eyes started to close, but he fought against the pull of unconsciousness, needing to finish what he'd started. One more thing, he whispered, voice barely audible. The house. It's yours now. Both of you. All of it. Lily's room. Make absolutely sure she knows it's always hers no matter what happens between you two. Even if life takes you in different directions, this will always be her home. Promise me you'll still be family. Promise me that much. We promise, Julia said firmly, tears streaming down her face. We promise, William. Good. That's good. Now I can rest. Now I can go to her. His eyes softened, as if seeing something beyond them. She's been waiting so long. His eyes closed. His breathing became shallow. Marcus and Julia sat on either side, holding his hands. Rosa wrapped blankets around their shoulders, then sat in the corner, praying quietly in Spanish. The four of them kept vigil as night wore on. William died at 4:37 a.m., just as first light touched the garden. He went peacefully, a slight smile on his face. Marcus broke. The walls he'd been building for years finally crumbled. He leaned over his father's body and sobbed, deep, wrenching cries from a place he'd kept locked too long. Julia moved to his side, wrapping her arms around him, letting him cry against her shoulder. She held him through the storm of his grief, whispering that it was okay, that she had him, that he wasn't alone. Rosa made phone calls. The hospice nurse arrived. The funeral home was contacted. But through it all, Julia never let go of Marcus. When Lily woke and Rosa gently told her Mr. William had died, the little girl came downstairs in pajamas, climbed onto the bed, and held William's other hand. Goodbye, Grandpa, she whispered. Thank you for loving us. Your roots are still here. We'll take care of them. As dawn fully broke and roses caught the light, Julia realized something profound. What had started as deception had become the most honest thing she'd ever experienced. Love didn't care about circumstances or timing, or whether relationships started with truth or necessity. Love grew where it was tended, and she was in love with Marcus Bennett, completely, terrifyingly in love. The question was whether he'd still want her when grief passed and real life returned, whether the roots Lily spoke of were strong enough to survive outside this house. But watching Marcus hold his father's hand while reaching for hers, Julia decided that question could wait. Right now, in this moment of profound grief and unexpected love, all that mattered was that they were together, and maybe that would be enough. William Bennett was laid to rest on a Tuesday morning under skies that couldn't decide between rain and sunshine. The service was small. Rosa, a handful of William's former colleagues, and the 3 people who'd become his family in his final days. Julia stood beside Marcus, holding his hand while Lily held his other one. To anyone watching, they looked like exactly what they were supposed to be, and it didn't feel like pretending anymore. After the service, reality settled in with uncomfortable weight. The medical equipment was gone from the conservatory. William's bedroom had been cleaned. The physical evidence of his illness had vanished, leaving only the hollow ache of absence. "What happens now?" Lily asked that evening. "Do we stay or go home?" Julia looked at her impossibly wise 8-year-old. "I don't know, baby. That's something Marcus and I need to figure out. Do you want to stay? Part of me does, but I'm scared." "Of what?" "Of finding out that what we felt here was just because of the situation. That in the real world, without William, without this house, it won't work." Lily tilted her head. "Mom, remember when you told me plants don't grow in perfect conditions? They grow wherever they're planted, as long as they have strong roots." Julia pulled her daughter into a hug, marveling at how children cut through complexity to find simple truth. That night, after Lily was asleep, Julia found Marcus in William's study surrounded by papers, legal documents, financial statements, photographs. "Hey," she said softly. "You okay?" "Executor of the estate," he explained. "There's so much to sort through. But Julia, he left something for us. A letter." "What does it say?" Marcus began to read, his hands trembling. "My son, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I know how this started. I knew from the beginning that Julia and Lily were a beautiful fiction you created to give me peace. I'm a lawyer, Marcus. I could see the performance." Julia felt the blood drain from her face. "He knew? The whole time?" Marcus continued. "But knowing it started as fiction didn't make it less real. I watched you fall in love with Julia. I watched her fall in love with you. I watched Lily bring joy back into your eyes. Sometimes the best love stories start with the worst reasons. You asked Julia to lie for me, and in doing so you both stumbled into truth. Don't throw this away because you feel guilty about how it started. The gift you gave me wasn't the performance. It was showing me that my son could still feel, still love, still risk his heart. Be happy, Marcus. You've earned it. All my love, Dad." Silence filled the study. Julia couldn't breathe. "He knew," Marcus repeated. "And he didn't care because he could see what we couldn't see ourselves." "What was that?" "That we were already falling. We just needed permission to admit it." Julia stood abruptly, moving to the window. "Marcus, I need to tell you something. I'm terrified." "Okay. Not of you. Not of my feelings. I'm terrified of this." She gestured around. "This house, this money, this life. I don't fit here." "Julia, let me finish. In 2 weeks, I've fallen completely in love with you. With the way you held your father's hand. With how you knelt to talk to Lily at her level. With your vulnerability when you finally let those walls come down." Tears streamed down her face. "But I'm a single mother who lives paycheck to paycheck. My apartment has water stains. Lily's clothes are mostly hand-me-downs. I don't know how to be in your world." Marcus stood, but she held up a hand. "And more than that, I'm afraid you don't really want me. I'm afraid that in the intensity of losing your father, you've convinced yourself you love me. But what happens in 6 months when grief isn't clouding everything? What happens when you realize I'm just a nurse who served you tea?" "Are you done?" Marcus asked quietly. "Yes." "Good. Because now it's my turn." He took her hands. "Julia, you're right. You don't fit here." Her heart sank. "You don't fit here because you're too big for any one place. You're the kind of person who makes everywhere better just by being there. This house came alive when you walked in. My father's last days were filled with joy because of you. And I'm better. Infinitely better. Because you showed me how to feel again." "Marcus, let me tell you about the real circumstances. 3 years ago, you brought me coffee and asked if I thought my patient would make it. Instead of brushing you off like I did with everyone else, I answered honestly. Do you know why?" Julia shook her head. "Because when you looked at me, I felt seen. Really seen. Not as Dr. Bennett, the brilliant surgeon. Just as Marcus, drowning in isolation, who'd forgotten how to reach for a lifeline. That was one conversation. And then there were Tuesday nights. Every Tuesday for 3 years, You brought me coffee without asking. You noticed when I was stressed. You left notes when you thought I needed encouragement. You cared about me long before I had the courage to care about you back. Julia felt her resistance crumbling. But what about all of this? She gestured around. The money is just stuff. Things my father accumulated. This house can be sold, the money donated. The only thing that matters is whether you want to build a life with me. Not in this house, not in your apartment, but somewhere we choose together. Lily is incredible, is already the daughter of my heart. Marcus pulled Julia closer. I love you. I love how you put everyone else first. I love how you taught your daughter to see love as roots that remain. I love that you gave me permission to cry for the first time in years. I love you too, Julia whispered. That's what makes this so scary. Then let's be scared together. Let's build something real from this impossible beginning. Let's prove my father right, that the best love stories sometimes start with the worst reasons. She looked up at him, this man who'd asked her to pretend and had somehow become the person she couldn't imagine living without. What if we mess it up? Then we'll mess it up together and figure it out. But Julia, I'd rather try and fail than spend my life wondering what if. She thought about Lily's words about plant roots, about William's letter acknowledging he'd known all along, about how she'd fallen in love not with Marcus's money, but with his vulnerability, his capacity for growth. Okay, she said. Okay, let's try. Let's build something real. She cupped his face. But I need you to understand. I'm going to feel insecure sometimes. I'm going to worry about fitting into your world. And I'm going to default to work when emotions get too intense. I'm going to struggle with letting people in. But Julia, I want to struggle with you by my side. He kissed her then, and it wasn't their first kiss. They'd shared a few during William's last days. But this was their first honest kiss, the first one that wasn't performance. It was real and terrifying and perfect. A small cough from the doorway broke them apart. Lily stood there in her pajamas, hair wild from sleep. So are we staying? She asked. Marcus knelt to her level. That depends. Would you want to stay? Not in this house necessarily, but with me, as a family. Lily considered this. Will you still take me to school and ask about my day? Every single day. Will you still love my mom even when she's grumpy before coffee? Marcus smiled. Especially then. And will you remember Mr. William? Because I don't want to forget him. Marcus's eyes filled with tears. We'll remember him every day, sweetheart. His love roots are still here, just like you said. Lily nodded, satisfied. Then yes, we should stay. But Marcus, can we paint my room? I really like teal. The tension broke, and both adults laughed through tears. Marcus pulled Lily into a hug, and Julia joined them. The three of them wrapped together in William's study. Over the next weeks, they began becoming a real family. Marcus returned to the hospital on reduced hours. Julia transferred to day shift. They sold the large estate and bought a smaller house in a neighborhood with good schools and friendly neighbors. Rosa came with them, insisting someone needed to make sure they ate properly. She became the grandmother figure that Lily had briefly experienced with William. William's estate went to establishing a scholarship fund for children who'd lost parents, a simple fund managed by Rosa that quietly paid tuition for kids who needed help. It seemed fitting that William's wealth would ease the burden Julia had once carried alone. On what would have been William's 72nd birthday, they gathered in the garden of their new home. Julia had planted roses, not as grand as William's, but beautiful in their simplicity. Lily placed flowers at the base of the largest rosebush. Happy birthday, Grandpa, she said softly. The roots are growing strong. Marcus pulled Julia close. What are you thinking? That your father was right. Sometimes the best love stories start with the worst reasons, but they become real when two people decide they're worth fighting for. Do you regret it? How we started? Julia thought carefully. No, because if you hadn't asked me to pretend, I never would have seen the real you. Sometimes we need permission to become who we're meant to be. And who are you meant to be? She smiled. Julia Bennett, if you'll have me. The woman who falls in love with wounded surgeons and teaches them that love isn't something to fear. Marcus pulled a small box from his pocket. I was going to wait for a more romantic moment, but my father once told me that waiting for perfect meant missing out on real. So here, in our garden, with our daughter watching, will you marry me? Really marry me? Not pretend. but because I love you and want to spend my life growing roots with you. Yes, Julia said without hesitation. Yes to all of it. Lily whooped with joy, racing over to see the ring. Rosa appeared from the kitchen with cookies, as if she'd known this moment was coming. And in that garden, surrounded by roses and love, and the memory of a man who taught them all that truth grows from fiction and real love emerges from impossible circumstances, Julia understood something profound. Life didn't require perfect conditions to bloom. It didn't require everything figured out before you took the leap. Sometimes the bravest thing you could do was say yes to love even when it started with pretending. Because in opening your heart, even to a fiction, you might discover a truth you'd been looking for all along. The walls we build to protect ourselves often become the very prisons that keep us from living fully. But when we find courage to let someone in, to be seen with all our wounds and fears and imperfections, we discover that love doesn't need perfect people. It just needs willing hearts. And sometimes, the greatest gift we can give ourselves is permission to be happy, even when we don't think we deserve it. Even when the path there wasn't what we planned. Even when it starts with pretending and grows into something more real than anything we dared imagine.